What's up, guys? I'm Chad Barnes, and welcome to the channel. Here, it's all about real car talk, from simple fixes to smart driving tips and keeping your ride in top shape. If that sounds good to you, go ahead and give the video a thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button and make sure you watch all the way through. There's a lot of good stuff coming. Let's get to it.
The government has prepared a large volume of amendments to traffic rules. They can be divided into three key categories. The first is the regulation of electric scooters, motorcycles, gyroscooters and other similar vehicles. They are combined under the term Personal Mobility Equipment (PME) and included in the traffic rules. The second category of amendments, introduction of new signs and markings into traffic rules and changing the rules of application of some existing ones. The third category, amendments to some rules, for example, stopping and parking, stopping in front of railroad crossings, passing traffic circles and so on. In addition, there are other amendments in the document, both formal and not related to the owners of passenger cars, for example, the rules of buses and transportation of dangerous goods. The decree and amendments were signed on October 6, 2022, but the date of entry into force of the new amendments to the traffic rules, March 1, 2023. At the same time, the decree specifies that in this form the traffic rules will be valid until March 1, 2029, after which they will have to be extended or reissued. Let us start with the main layer of changes, those relating to electric scooters, gyroscooters and other similar equipment. We have already noted that there was a gap in the current legislation, according to the traffic regulations, users of electric vehicles with a motor of less than 250 watts were classified as pedestrians, and those with a more powerful motor were classified as mopeds. But no one controlled the power anyway. Now this gap has been eliminated. Clause 1.2 of the traffic rules is supplemented with the concept of means of individual mobility. Means of individual mobility, a vehicle with one or more wheels, rollers, designed for individual movement of a person through the use of a motor, engines, electric scooters, electric skateboards, gyroscooters, segways, monowheels and other similar means. As can be seen, SIMs are not linked to motor power. This eliminates the need to check their documents and differentiate their movement. At the same time, according to paragraph 1.2 of the traffic rules, SIMs do not belong to mechanical vehicles, that is, in this respect they are equal to bicycles. In addition, SIM users have been clearly separated from pedestrians. Now pedestrians are considered to be persons driving a means of individual mobility. SIM users over the age of 14 can travel on bicycle paths, bicycle pedestrian paths, bicycle zone roadways, bicycle lane, pedestrian zone if the mass of the means of individual mobility does not exceed 35 kilograms, on the sidewalk, footpath, if the mass of the mobility aid does not exceed 35 kilograms and if one of the following conditions is met, there are no bicycle and bicycle pedestrian paths, bicycle lane or there is no possibility to move on them, the person using the mobility aid is accompanied by a child under 14 years of age using the mobility aid or a cyclist under 14 years of age, on the roadside if there is no bicycle and bicycle pedestrian path, bicycle lane, sidewalk, pedestrian path or there is no possibility to move along them, on the right edge of the roadway if the following conditions are met at the same time, there is no bicycle and bicycle pedestrian path, bicycle lane, sidewalk, footpath, curb or there is no possibility to move along them, the movement of vehicles at a speed not exceeding 60 km per hour and the movement of bicycles is allowed. On the road, the means of individual mobility is equipped with a braking system, a sound signal, retroreflectors of white color in the front, orange or red color on the sides, red color in the back, a headlight, lamp of white color in the front. At the same time, paragraph 24.5 specifies that the movement of cyclists and persons using means of individual mobility on the right edge of the carriageway in cases provided for by these rules shall be carried out only in one row. In addition, persons using personal mobility aids are prohibited to overtake or pass on the left side of the vehicle. SIM users between the ages of the 7th and the 14th of May travel on sidewalks, on pedestrian paths, bike lanes, on bicycle pedestrian paths, within pedestrian zones. Children under 7 years of age using a SIM may move on sidewalks, on pedestrian paths, on bicycle pedestrian paths, on the pedestrian side within pedestrian zones. At the same time, the traffic rules stipulate that the movement of children under 7 years of age who use personal mobility aids must Be accompanied by adults only. Paragraph 17.1 states that pedestrians have priority in residential areas, but they must not cause unreasonable interference on the carriageway with the movement of vehicles and persons using personal mobility aids. Persons moving in wheelchairs, driving a motorcycle, moped, bicycle, personal mobility device when moving along the edge of the roadway must follow the course of vehicles. Clause 6.5 of the traffic rules has been redrafted. 6.5 If the traffic signal has a pedestrian silhouette, it applies only to pedestrians. If the traffic signal is in the form of a bicycle, it applies to cyclists and moped drivers moving in the bicycle lane. Persons using for movement means of individual mobility in accordance with paragraph 24.21 of these rules shall be guided by traffic signals in the form of a silhouette of a pedestrian or bicycle when they move respectively on the sidewalk, footpath or bicycle. Bicycle pedestrian paths, bike lane. The green signal allows and the red signal prohibits the movement of pedestrians, cyclists and persons using personal mobility aids. A traffic light with round signals of reduced size, supplemented by a rectangular white sign 200 by 200 mm in size with the image of a bicycle in black, may also be used to regulate the movement of cyclists and persons using personal mobility aids. Paragraph 6.10 concerning traffic signals has also received a new paragraph. Persons using personal mobility aids for travel should be guided by pedestrian traffic signals. The same amendments were made to paragraph 6.14. Now, when the yellow signal is turned on or the traffic controller raises his hand up, pedestrians and persons using personal mobility aids who were on the carriageway when the signal was given must vacate it, and if it is impossible, stop on the line separating traffic flows of opposite directions. Clause 8.3 has been revised. Now when entering the road from the adjacent territory, the driver must give way to vehicles, persons using personal mobility aids, and pedestrians moving along it, and when leaving the road, to pedestrians, cyclists and persons using personal mobility aids, whose path of movement he crosses. Point 13.1 has been clarified. When turning right or left, the driver is obliged to give way to pedestrians, persons using personal mobility aids and cyclists crossing the carriageway of the road to which he is turning. The same applies to point 14.3, at regulated crosswalks, when the permissive traffic signal is activated, the driver must allow pedestrians and persons using personal mobility aids to finish crossing the carriageway, streetcar tracks, of the corresponding direction. Paragraph 17.3 has also been supplemented. When leaving a residential area, drivers and persons using personal mobility aids must give way to other road users. The new paragraph 24.6(1) states that when a cyclist or a person using a mobility aid crosses a carriageway outside an intersection, the said persons must give way to other road users on the carriageway. Some electric scooters and motorcycles can accelerate up to 60 to 80 km per hour, and some of their owners may think that this makes them fit to take to the highway. However, paragraph 16.1 clearly states that pedestrians, persons using personal mobility aids, and AMP-LT and AMP-GT are prohibited on highways at night and in low visibility conditions, regardless of the road lighting, and in tunnels, bicycles and personal mobility aids must have their headlights or lights on. During daylight hours, all moving vehicles, except bicycles, must have dipped beam headlights or daytime running lights on to indicate them. In other words, the requirement to switch on daytime low beam or daytime running lights also applies to SIM. Clause 24.10 is not only supplemented with SIM, but now obliges to have reflective elements in conditions of low visibility. When driving at night or in conditions of insufficient visibility, cyclists, persons using personal mobility aids and moped drivers are advised, and outside populated areas these persons are obliged to carry objects with retroreflective elements and to ensure that these objects are visible to drivers of other vehicles. In the current wording, reflective elements are among the recommended attributes. The new paragraph 24.6 of the Traffic Code states that persons using personal mobility aids are allowed to drive at a speed of no more than 25 km per hour. However, the same paragraph states that if the movement of a cyclist or a person using a personal mobility device, in the cases provided 4. In this regulation, on a sidewalk, footpath, curb or within pedestrian zones, including cycle paths located in pedestrian zones, endangers or obstructs pedestrian traffic, the cyclist shall dismount and follow the requirements provided for pedestrian traffic. In this regulation, and the person using a personal mobility device shall have priority over pedestrians. In addition, in all cases of combined pedestrian and bicycle traffic and persons using personal mobility aids, pedestrians have priority. SIM users are prohibited under the new regulations. Drive a personal mobility device if it has a handlebar without holding the handlebar, with at least one hand to carry passengers if this is not provided for by the equipment or design of the mobility aid, to tow personal mobility aids as well as towing by personal mobility aids, except for towing by a personal mobility aid of a trailer intended for operation with a personal mobility aid. Sign 3.10 Pedestrian traffic is prohibited. The movement of pedestrians and persons using personal mobility aids is prohibited. New sign 3.35 Movement on personal mobility aids is prohibited. Sign 4.5. 1. Pedestrian walkway. Pedestrians, persons using personal mobility aids and bicyclists are allowed in the cases specified in paragraphs 24.2, 24 and 4 of this regulation. Sign 5.11. 2. Road with bicycle lane. A road on which the movement of cyclists, persons using personal mobility aids and moped drivers is carried out on a specially designated lane towards the general flow of vehicles. Sign 5.33 Pedestrian zone. The place from which the territory road section starts on which the movement of pedestrians and, in cases specified in paragraphs 24.2, 24.4 and 24.6 of these regulations, persons using personal mobility aids and cyclists is allowed. Plate 8.4. 7.1 extends the effect of the sign to cyclists, Plate 8.4. 7.2 to persons using personal mobility aids. Sign 8.4. 16 does not extend the effect of the sign to persons using personal mobility aids. In addition, the horizontal marking 1.23. 2 is extended in rights designation of a pedestrian path or pedestrian part of the path intended for joint movement of pedestrians, persons using personal mobility aids and cyclists. As we remember, the second category of innovations in traffic rules is the introduction of new terms, signs and markings, as well as changes in the rules of application of some existing ones. Let's consider them. The shoulder is no longer required to be located at the same level as the roadway, now it is an element of the road, adjacent directly to the roadway, distinguished by the type of pavement or highlighted by markings 1.2, used for traffic, stopping and parking. In accordance with the rules, there is a new term in the traffic rules. Guiding island is an element of the roadway arrangement located at the same level as the carriageway or raised above it and providing favorable conditions for the separation and merging of traffic flows. For example, these are areas marked with markings or curbs that indicate the direction and boundaries of the traffic flow. In this case, on roads with two-way traffic in the absence of a dividing strip, islands guiding, safety islands, bollards and elements of road structures, supports of bridges, overpasses and the like, located in the middle of the carriageway, the driver must bypass on the right, unless signs and markings do not prescribe otherwise. In addition, stopping on guide islands and safety islands is prohibited. The content of the term separation lane has been expanded, now it is a road element, allocated structurally and or by means of marking 1.2, separating adjacent carriageways, carriageway and streetcar tracks or separating lanes for route vehicles and or lanes for cyclists from other traffic lanes within the same carriageway and not intended for traffic and stopping vehicles. Diagonal crosswalks are now marked with the new marking 1.14. 3. At the same time at a regulated intersection it is allowed to cross the roadway between opposite corners of the intersection, diagonally, only in the presence of marking 1.14. 3. Indicating such a crosswalk. Changes in paragraph 4.5 of the traffic rules oblige pedestrians to make sure that it is safe to cross at any place, now not only at unregulated, but in general at all crosswalks. Pedestrians can go on the roadway, streetcar tracks, after assessing the distance to approaching vehicles, their speed and make sure that the crossing will be safe for them. Traffic lights under the new regulations may have one additional section. The informational light section in the form of a pedestrian silhouette and an arrow with a flashing signal of white lunar color located under the traffic light informs the driver that at the crosswalk in the direction of which he turns, the traffic light signal is on, allowing pedestrians to move. The direction of the arrow points to the crosswalk at which the traffic signal allowing pedestrians is on. New attention, passenger. Light boards will appear on fixed route vehicles, in particular, streetcars. In the event that the light board attention, passenger is switched on such a standing route vehicle, the driver approaching from behind must stop in front of marking 1.17. 2. And in its absence in front of the route vehicle without interfering with pedestrians boarding and disembarking from the roadway or from the landing area located on it. It is allowed to start driving only in the absence of pedestrians on the roadway and after turning off the light board attention, passenger. Bicyclists are forbidden to park on the edge of the sidewalk. Now parking on the edge of the sidewalk bordering the roadway is allowed only for cars, motorcycles and mopeds in places marked by sign 6.4 with one of the signs 8.6. 2. 8.6. 3. 8.6. 6. 8.6. 9. Stopping places for route vehicles or parking of passenger cabs are now marked with markings 1.17. 1 and 1.17. 2. And it is prohibited to stop closer than 15 meters from them. Sign 3.1 entry prohibited can now be applied together with signs 8.4. 1. 8.4. 8. 8.5. 1. 8.5. 7 and 8.4. 9. 8.4. 16. That is, it can now be applied not only with the sign distance to object, but also with information signs, type of vehicle, other than type of vehicle, Saturdays, Sundays and public holidays, working days, days of the week, time of action. The time of repositioning under signs 3.29 and 3.30 parking is prohibited on even numbers of the month has been changed. When signs 3.29 and 3.30 are applied simultaneously on opposite sides of the roadway, parking is permitted on both sides of the roadway from 9 p.m. to 24 p.m. Repositioning time. Sign 3.27 can no longer be used in conjunction with marking 1.4 and sign 3.28 can no longer be used in conjunction with marking 1.10, and the zone of validity of these signs is not determined by the extent of the marking line. The concept of temporary signs has been expanded. Now, in addition to signs on a yellow background, signs mounted on portable supports are considered temporary. The amendments introduce some new signs and placards, in particular, 3.34 bus traffic is prohibited sign and 8.26 electric vehicle charging placard. The color range of applied horizontal markings has been extended. Now the following colors are set for permanent horizontal markings, including duplication of road signs: white, yellow, red, blue, black, green. For temporary road markings, orange color is set, except for markings 1.4, 1.10, 1.17, 1, 1.17, 2 and 1.26. The use of marking 1.7 has been extended. It now designates lanes within an intersection or a parking zone. Blue markings indicate that the parking zone is used on a paid basis. The rules for stopping in front of railroad crossings have been clarified. Now in cases when the movement through the crossing is prohibited, the driver must stop at the stop line and or sign 6.16 sign 2.5 if they are not present, not closer than 5 m from the traffic light or barrier, and in the absence of a traffic light or barrier, not closer than 10 m to the nearest rail. The PDD enshrines the possibility of providing documents in electronic form. A new footnote to paragraph 2.1. 1 states that documents provided for in these rules, if they are executed electronically in accordance with the legislation of the Russian Federation, shall be submitted in the form of an electronic document or a hard copy thereof. The norms of compulsory rest of a driver while driving have been changed. The driving time shall not exceed 9 hours within a period not exceeding 24 hours from the moment of starting to drive the vehicle. After completion of the daily or weekly rest, This time may be increased to 9 hours, but not more than 3 times during the period between 2 consecutive weekly rest periods. In addition, a clarification has been added that any daily rest may be replaced by a weekly rest. In conclusion, the recent amendments to the traffic rules for electric scooters, effective from October 6, mark a significant step towards enhancing safety and regulation in urban mobility. With changes such as speed limits, designated riding areas, and mandatory safety gear, these new rules aim to create a safer environment for both scooter riders and pedestrians. As we adapt to these updates, it is crucial for all users to stay informed and comply with the regulations to ensure a smooth transition. Thank you for watching, and stay safe on the roads.